Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. A few weeks ago, I talked about the quality of genius that allows us to hold contradictory truths at the same time. And that is a beautiful example of that we are whole and we are imperfect in the same moment. And I really believe that, Siobhan, you were standing in for the soul of humanity today. That we are broken and beautiful as a people, as a species. There is something so possible, the potential that we have to express the divinity of our being is so ripe within us, and yet we look around the world and we see all the ways in which we're failing. I will say that after a week of natural disaster, it's not pleasant to give a talk after that, but there's an easy path. It's to comfort us and bring us together in love. But after what we've gone through this week, it's a little bit more perilous to be preaching this morning. That we are in such a divided time in our nation, and I don't lose sleep over talks many times, but I was awake quite a bit last night, and I know that a lot of ministers are feeling what I'm feeling. So I just said a prayer this morning for all ministers and pastors, priests and rabbis and imams who are seeking to bring spiritual comfort and inspiration in a time when we are so broken, and to remind us of our beauty. So I want to remind you that what we're doing for this month of January, typically I think most people, if they're going to address what happened in Washington this week in their sermons, they had to throw out whatever they had planned to do something new. I think Spirit must have been moving in me because today's topic and this month's theme is really perfect. It's the perfect context that I would like to place our discussion about where we are as a people and as a nation, what's going on. So for all 5 weeks in January, we're exploring the evolution of human consciousness using spiral dynamics theory as sort of the backbone of this series. And I want to give a shout out and a big thank you to Cindy Wigglesworth, longtime member of Unity of Houston. She is our resident expert in this field. If you don't know her and her work, SQ21 is this 21 Skills of Spiritual Intelligence is her wonderful book, and she has certified coaches in this work all over the world. She's really an amazing person. And she has gifted to our community her own online curriculum on this topic of conscious evolution. It's free to you now for this month. And so if you're interested in learning more about the theory and the way it all works together, because I don't have time in a Sunday message, even over 5 weeks, to go into great depth, but I will be referring to it. So if you're a little confused by some of the concepts or you would just like to know more, I really encourage you to take advantage of her generous offer. You can find the link to that on the homepage, unityhouston.org, in that same blue box where the other things I mentioned today are. So I'm going to get to the riots in the Capitol in a moment, but I want to start first with my title today, which is From Me to We. And this is a hallmark of conscious evolution, that as we evolve, both individually and collectively, our inclusivity expands naturally. It is just the logical outcome that happens when we rise more into knowing the truth of reality. Of course, we recognize that we are not alone in this, that all beings are a part. And this is what our teaching has always been about, that we are one with God, we are one with all. Unity, that's our name. Now, it's easy to say it sounds great, it's a good bumper sticker, but to live it is challenging. It requires our growth and healing. We all have to grow in conscious evolution so that we can embody unity at greater and greater levels. Our values that we seek to live by here at Unity of Houston being, becoming, and belonging. Being, we live from our oneness with God and each other, experiencing abundance and connection with all life, becoming. Through spiritual practice and through grace, we heal and grow, revealing the Christ within. And belonging, we create a spiritual home for all people, knowing that we are one body and that we belong to each other. We have a reputation as that love everybody church, and I love it. And we don't always live up to it either. There is a process. You may be surprised to discover, but Unity didn't always bless same-sex unions. That was something that Unity of Houston had, and the Unity movement had to grow into in broadening the inclusivity. We've been more and more aware of the need to honor the diversity in our community in all ways. And what I feel is that we're on the precipice of another expansion of our love everybody name. That we are being asked to grow and to stretch into this now. My objectives for this series, really, I was thinking about it this morning. I'm so glad that I came up with these 3 words. I'm here to comfort, to inspire, and to challenge you. To comfort and to challenge and inspire myself and all of us. And it really is fitting for this series, but it's really kind of my job in general, is to bring comfort when we are feeling uncomfortable and at sea and even in sadness and despair, to bring comfort. To bring inspiration. I believe that this teaching of conscious evolution should inspire us, because what we're going through now is a chapter, it's not the whole story. And that there is something in the nature of reality, in the nature of spirit, in God's being that uses the broken things to reveal beauty. And we grow through times of great difficulty. And to challenge us in that it's not something that happens automatically. I'm going to talk about that later in the series, that it's not guaranteed that we will reach those greater tiers of consciousness. It requires work and willingness, humility. Those things are required. So that's the context for what we're doing today. So quickly, I want to give you a few things about, and again, I can't go and explain what all these colors and levels are, but at the very beginnings of the spiral, the beige level of survival, the only concern is for personal survival and those biological needs of survival. So your children, maybe those family unit members around you who would help you survive. That's really the we. That's all it is. It's a very me-oriented place. The next level up is the purple or the tribal. The we becomes a little bit bigger. There's another feature of the theory that says every level alternates with a focus on the individual, and the next one will focus more on the collective. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but it's in the theory. From the purple, we go to the red, which is all about power, and that's where, under the strong man or strong woman, countries, nations can be formed, a larger collective that I can be a part of. In blue, the rule of law, that following the creed, the holy books, we can even grow more. We can have worldwide religions. We can have empires of we, but at the blue level, there is still a lot of not we. Those who don't follow our religion, those who don't follow our rules of conduct, they are other. There's a lot more we, and there's a lot more not we. Out of the blue comes the orange level of rational thought. And that is more one of those levels focused on the individual contribution, but it's also a level of fact and science and discovery and innovation. Hugely important. And it breaks down some of those old barriers around the blue we and not we. And it has a tremendous emphasis on innovation, becoming science, all those things. Sometimes it's called the strive drive, and sometimes that striving. Also want to say again that each of these levels has a healthy expression and an unhealthy expression. And another key part of this theory is that we don't leave one behind as we grow individually or collectively or as a species or as a society. We include and transcend. Typically, in integral theory, they say it the other way around, but Richard Rohr says that this, instead of transcend, then include. We include and transcend, and I like that too. That we integrate those previous levels of conscious evolution, and then the new is formed. And from that orange drive, which can run roughshod over minorities, over the environment, something else is required. And the green level emerges, which is about care for planet, for those who are in the periphery. There is a greater inclusion. Again, every time our we becomes bigger. And what we're really seeking to understand is that we are part of a whole. And we actually could say it like this way: it's me to we to all. That is the path of conscious evolution. But at this green level, even though it seeks so hard to include and be inclusive, and inclusivity is what it's all about, all voices matter, but there is always a shadow, right? The green will often push back against the rigidity of blue or the selfishness of orange. And so there are those excluded there too. And if you remember from last week, what happens after the green level is a shift, a leap to second-tier consciousness, which is the first time in human consciousness that an individual or a system or an organization or a company or a nation can appreciate and speak the language of all the previous levels of consciousness. Up until then, this is just going to be a cue. You could just kind of do your own self-test here. All the previous levels, they feel that they are at the peak of the mountain. Like there's an evolution and I have arrived. I'm here. I've figured it out. All of the levels have that feeling like my perspective is the right one. Is this ringing any bells for anybody? Perhaps some of you have outgrown a previous, maybe a more dogmatic religion, and you've broken into this much more expansive and inclusive way. And you're like, well, I thought I had it figured out then, but now I really got it. Now you ain't got it. This evolutionary impulse will never be complete. Our journey of conscious evolution there's no finish line. But at that level of second tier, we began to integrate and incorporate all of the wisdom and the gifts of every previous level. And from tier 2, from that yellow, that flow function of consciousness, we can become solution-oriented again, and we can move swiftly towards solution. Having conversations with people at the right level. Don Beck, who's one of the creators of this theory based on the work of Claire Graves, who came earlier, he was instrumental in some of the truth and reconciliation work in South Africa. And as President Nelson Mandela was going around garnering support for this new government and this new way of being post-apartheid in South Africa, Don Beck was able to give some instruction and some context around spiral dynamics. And so President Mandela would often ask, what color am I speaking to in this audience? This is a blue talk I'm going to give here. This is a red talk. This is an orange talk. And this is a function of yellow consciousness on the spiral, that it can begin to speak the language of the listener. It's also mockingbird energy from the southeastern tribes here in our country. And I am actually a member of the Cherokee Nation, very little Cherokee. In Oklahoma, the Cherokee, they don't believe in tribal or blood purity. It's not about genetics, it's about culture. And if you can trace an ancestor to the original Dawes Rolls in the early 1900s, and if you want to be a member of that nation, you can be. And so my family, we are members of the Cherokee Nation. And mockingbird medicine in the Cherokee people, it is the ability to speak the truth in the language of the listener. And so that is my goal today, is that I can speak what is needed for our times, for the condition that is currently arising. I want to say, too, have you ever dislocated a thumb or broken a toe? Or I understand that gout and, what's the other one? Shingles are where there's a lot of inflammation and everything is very painful to the touch. You know, you've ever experienced anything like that where a part of your body was really sensitive and painful and inflamed? That's what I'm preaching into today in our nation, in our consciousness. And I already got angry emails before he even gave the talk. That's never happened before, but that happened this week. So just that's what's going on. And so if you feel yourself rising, some have already probably left the building because of what we're talking about today. But if you feel yourself get triggered, I just invite you to calm, to ease. And my focus today, I'm a pretty emotional guy, and I don't mind bringing my heart into what I do. And I'm going to try and keep a lot of this talk in the head because I think that's where we need it. So this may feel a little boring to some, but I think this theory and this solution that is offered by spiral dynamics is exactly what we need for this moment to move from me to we. Anger is okay as long as we don't build a house there. This comes from the granddaughter of our founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, Rosemary Fillmore Ray. She writes this: "The world has been changed for the better by men and women who have been angry. Angry about life conditions, prejudices, bigotries, the seeming inequities of life. They turned their anger into creative energy, and vaccines were discovered. Laws were passed, philosophies were born, schools and charities were established, books were written, and symphonies composed." It's okay to be angry. But can we channel that anger into the creative energies of what wants to happen next in your personal life and in our collective consciousness? What we saw in our nation's capital on Wednesday was painful. I had come home, I had meetings that earlier out, and I turned it on just to kind of see what was going on. I was curious about this very kind of arcane electoral college procedure where Congress votes to accept the results of the electoral college's election. And I knew that there was going to be objections. There were going to be objections. So I decided to tune in, and I was watching the speeches and having opinions. And then the commentators on the news channel began to say something is happening. And then there were the images of the crowd that had broken through the barriers. And then the commentators said, we're getting reports that they're inside the building. And something in me, I'm going to manage this emotion, something in me got a little scared and a little angry. And then to see those images, and to hear the yelling, it was desecration was the word that was used a lot. And even though our government has a strong separation of church and state, there is something holy about our agreements, about the way we operate as a society, and to see that the very heart of our collective agreements on how we are to be as a people, to see it desecrated, become de-sacred. It was hard, and I cried. I was angry. I was sad. I was scared. So what I want to tell you today is that I'm a part of this. I'm not some wise bystander who's arisen to the top of evolution. I'm in it. I don't know exactly where I am on the spiral, but I've got some ideas. But what I want to share with you today is that lawlessness and that violence that we saw is wrong. No two ways about that. And what is required and that's red, that angry red power, no regard for what is lawful. What is required as the answer to dysfunctional red power energy is blue, rule of law. People must be held to account for the laws that have been broken. That must happen. That is the way to restore ourselves back into sanity in our system that we have set up. So that must happen. Blue is required for the outrageous red energy that we saw. And there's another piece. This is the part where some may feel I'm going to go a little controversial. I've never endorsed a political candidate from this pulpit, and I never will. I do encourage people to vote. But I do speak about current events because it's what's up for us. It's what's happening in the collective. And sometimes politics becomes the current event. So I'm not going to hold any sort of a partisan stance here, but I'm going to talk about what we're seeing in our system. Lies have been told and believed and acted upon. disinformation, propaganda. It has occurred, and it is driving dysfunction in our system, in our nation. What we need to combat and remedy this particular illness and this disease we're seeing is orange, logic, rational thought, facts. We have to look at what is actually happening. Before the election, President Donald Trump stated that if he did not win the election, it will be because it was illegal. It was rigged, it was stolen. This statement was not based in fact. That is an illogical statement, but he said it. And his followers believed it, many, not all, but it was not based in fact. So I'm just going to remind us all of the facts of this election. After the election, charges of fraud were investigated. Attorney General William Barr, who is a staunch Trump ally, he did an unprecedented thing. He gave the Justice Department the orders to go look for fraud rather than wait for evidence to come forward and then investigate. But they did. They investigated. And what he said on December 1st, he made a statement that said that no evidence of widespread fraud that would affect the outcome of this election was found. That happened on December 1st. President Trump's legal team kept bringing cases to question the outcome of the elections, particularly in those battleground states, and almost all of those cases were dismissed or the Trump team lost. The vote was certified in all 50 states. There were many recounts in some of the contested states. The final results of the presidential election are this. This is fact. 306 electoral votes for Joe Biden, 81,283,485 popular votes. It's 51.2% of all votes cast. That is the fact. Donald Trump, 232 electoral votes, 74,223,744 popular votes, 46.9% of all votes cast. We have all voted for candidates that didn't win, and it sucks. It's a hard thing to take when our philosophy that we're trying to put forward into the world, our values, and it doesn't turn out the way we want. Everyone has experienced that, and we have to accept it and move on. 4 years ago when Donald Trump won, one of my friends said, "He's not my president," and that bothered me a great deal because Donald Trump fairly won the election in the Electoral College through our process that we have agreed to use in 2016. He did not win in 2020. And if we cannot come to an agreement that this is the system we are using and we must accept the facts. This is the scientific mind of the orange level of spiral dynamics that says pay attention to what can be measured, observed. This will heal us. But what has happened in our society instead is the people are making up their own facts. Do you know about the woozle effect? There's a beautiful story in A.A. Milne's Tales from the 100-Acre Woods where Pooh and Piglet Pooh comes to see Piglet, and then they notice that there's a pair of footprints following Winnie the Pooh. And they said, "Somebody's following you, Pooh." And they began to walk, and they come around the stand of larch trees, and it's like, oh, now there are two sets of footprints. Somebody is following us both. And they go around the larch stand again, and now there are 4 sets of footprints. It's a whole gang of woozles out to get us. Christopher Robin descends from the oak tree and says, "Silly Pooh, those are your footprints. You're walking in circles." The woozle effect is something that has occurred in the internet age, in the conspiracy theory age, where someone posts false facts, and then it gets cited and recited and recited, and people stir up this whole storm of false facts. They're not facts. It's a false story, but people believe it. And it's not that new. How long? You know, the moon landing hoax, that never happened. It was filmed in a Hollywood studio. We have people in this church who worked at NASA, worked on those launches, and it was real. People don't believe it. Flat earth theory has come back in the 21st century. People believe that the earth is flat. It's not supported by physics, but people believe it because they can't see that it's false. What happens at the lower levels of consciousness. I called, or Cindy Wigglesworth, and I had a text with her yesterday. We've been talking, we have a lot of great conversations, but how conspiracy theories, how it's kind of blowing my mind, because what I've been seeing is that from the left and the right, they come together and believe the same conspiracy theory. And it's like, how does that happen? The 5G is going to give us all cancer or control us by the vaccine microchip that Bill Gates is going to give us. I mean, all of those things, it's people on both ends of the political spectrum are saying the same things, and they're not based in fact. And Cindy helped me understand that at the pre-orange level, the pre-rational levels, they haven't yet integrated rational thought in that way. They operate at levels of belief, levels of might makes right. And that at the green level of should be post-rational, but they're still in reaction against the smugness of those facts of the orange scientist. That's how that happens. And what we have to do, what I believe our job as Unity, as a 21st century yellow church and spiritual movement, is to come to this place where we incorporate the rational, logical, science-based, fact-based, this is what we deal with, this is the world as it is, and then we bring in the trans-rational spirituality. There is more than this. But here's the thing. Our spiritual revelations, it does not negate the material world. My understanding is the more that science teaches us, that's more revelation of who and what God is. And so if it doesn't fit with my understanding of God, it's my understanding and definition that was wrong. This orange, this rational thought is what is needed now for us to heal. Don Beck says, the founder of Spiral Dynamics, he says, the safest place in a time of crisis is the hard truth. That's what we have to do. I want to close with a statement of Jesus. I'm going to read it to you. It's from the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5. You have heard it said to love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. The metaphysics of love your enemy is this. If you do not love your enemy, if you have an enemy, you are an enemy. You've heard it said to be a friend, to have a friend, be a friend. It works in the other way too. If you have enemies, it's because you are an enemy. And the metaphysics is being asked us to love our enemies and we love ourselves. We return ourselves into the right function of who and what we are. Doesn't mean that forgiveness does not mean that we condone the activities. Accountability and forgiveness can go hand in hand. I don't want us to be thinking that we're all like these, children or parental figures and we're taking care of the children who are lower on the scale of conscious evolution. It's not like that. But if that helps you move from enemy to what we say in the 12 steps is when we see people acting crazy, we would treat them as we would treat a sick person. They're just ill. They just don't know. Instead of thinking of them as evil and they're my enemy, can we absolutely put the boundaries in place to keep them in check, to keep us safe, blue? And can we remember that we are all one, that they are a part of us? There's no place to go. They tried a civil war here once before, and we're still all here. There's no place where we can put all the people we don't like someplace else. We're in it together, and we must find a way forward. And if we return at that eye for an eye place, it's never going to work. And so the question for you today is, who will you be? Who will you be as a part of the solution that wants to come forward? Howard Thurman says this, there is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will all your life spend your days on the strings that somebody else pulls. Spirit is asking for something from you that only you can bring to the healing of us all. There's a story I'd like to close with of an old woman in a small village, very wise. Some of the older children began to be a little suspicious of how could anyone be that wise and know that much. And they began to devise a scheme to trick her. So they found a fledgling bird in a nest, and one of the older children said, I will hold this bird in my hands. I will come to the old woman and I will say, tell us, is this bird alive or is it dead? If she says it's alive, I will crush it. If she says it is dead, I will open my hands and set it free. So they found the old woman and they said, wise one, tell us. There's the puzzle. Is this bird alive or dead? The old woman became very still. She looked at the boy's hands. She looked in his eyes. And she said, it's in your hands now. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.